working to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Hello and welcome to ASEAN in Focus. Joining me today is from our EBC Vietnam Bureau. Hello, Chriselle.
Hello, Alma. Good afternoon to you and to all of our viewers. I'm Chriselle Yacona from your EBC Vietnam Bureau, bringing you the latest updates in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines. The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council said it has received reports that 12 persons remain missing in Catanduanes due to Typhoon Quinta.
Malacanang on Sunday wished Vice President Leni Robredo a good health after she revealed that she was exposed to a person who tested positive for coronavirus disease.
I'm Brian Rabbit, acting.
Global financial titan Goldman Sachs agreed to pay $2.9 billion in penalties to settle criminal charges in the 1MDB Malaysian bribery scandal, the largest U.S. fine ever in a corruption case, according to the Justice Department.
These charges stem from Goldman Sachs's.
Tarmac meals have become an unlikely hit for coronavirus-battered Singapore Airlines, with hundreds of passengers paying the equivalent of a budget ticket just to dine inside grounded A380 jumbos.
First, in the Philippines, Typhoon Quinta, or international name Molave, is now in the vicinity of Mamburao, Occidental Mindoro, and is forecast to emerge over the West Philippine Sea. Pag-asa expects Quinta to remain a typhoon category throughout its passage over Mindoro Island. After emerging over the West Philippine Sea, it's likely to re-intensify, and then it may reach its peak intensity within 24 to 48 hours. It maintains its strength, packing a maximum sustained winds of 125 kilometers per hour near the center and gustiness of up to 150 kilometers per hour. This typhoon is moving westwards at 25 kilometers per hour. Moderate to heavy winds, at times intense rains, will continue over Occidental Mindoro, Oriental Mindoro, Romblon, Marinduque, Northern Palawan, including Calamian and Cuyo Islands, Calabarzon, Aurora, Isabela, Aklan, Capiz, and Antique. Moderate to heavy rains will also be experienced over Cagayan, Apayao, Kalinga, Abra, Ilocos Norte, and Ilocos Sur due to the tail end of a frontal system. Now, the two weather systems will cause light to moderate with at times heavy rains over Metro Manila, Zamboanga Peninsula, Barm, Northern Mindanao, Caraga, and the rest of Luzon and Visayas. Meanwhile, these are the areas under tropical signals 3, 2, and 1. Take a look. Now, Quinta will continue to move westward until this afternoon and then will turn to west-northwestward towards the western boundary of the Philippine Area of Responsibility, and Quinta is forecast to exit the PAR tomorrow morning.
The Department of Health, or DOH, on Sunday reported 14,944 new recovered cases of coronavirus, pushing the nationwide total to 328 and 36. The DOH also reported 2,223 newly confirmed COVID-19 cases, which bring the total tally 2015. Quezon City tops the list areas with followed by Laguna with 111, Rizal with 109, Cavite with 79, and Batangas with 74. Of the active cases, the DOH noted that 82% of the active cases are patients with mild symptoms, 11.3% are asymptomatic, 4.2% are critical, and 2.4% are severe. The DOH logged 43 deaths, pushing the total number of fatalities nationwide to 6,977. And I quote, of the 43 deaths, 29 or 67% occurred in October, 3 or 7% in September, 5 or 12% in August, 3 or 7% in July, 1 or 2% in June, and 1 or 5% in May, end quote, it said. Adjusting its COVID-19 data, the DOH removed 14 duplicates from the total case count of these 9 were recovered cases. And I quote, moreover, 11 cases previously tagged as recovered were reclassified as deaths. These numbers undergo constant cleaning and validation, it said. As of Saturday, the DOH reported 43% of the 1,900 intensive care unit beds and 43% of the 13,600 isolation beds occupied. It added only 36% of the 6,000 ward beds are occupied and 24% of the 2,000 ventilators dedicated for COVID-19 patients are in use.
Back to weather news in the Philippines. The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council said it has received reports that 12 persons remain missing in Catanduanes due to Typhoon Quinta. And the RRMC spokesperson, Asean said they are now looking into the details of this matter and they have yet to receive reports of deaths and other casualties. He added those missing are fisher folk from different barangays. Meanwhile, there are now 2,475 families or around 9,235 persons affected by the typhoon. And they're mostly from Mindoro, Marinduque, Romblon, and Palawan or Mimaropa, the Bicol region, and the Cordillera Administrative Region. Also, Timbal said preemptive evacuations were reported in these regions. Power interruptions were also experienced in Quezon, Albay, Catanduanes, Camarines Sur, Masbate, and Sorsogon. Timbal added that the Philippine Coast Guard has responded to a sinking incident off the waters of Batangas. He added that they are waiting for updates on the incident. To Thailand now, where thousands gathered at a major Bangkok intersection to renew calls for Premier Prayut Chan-o-cha to resign after he ignored a deadline to step down set by protesters who have issued unprecedented challenges to the regime. The former military chief who staged a 2014 coup is facing pressure from a student-led pro-democracy movement that has organized massive demonstrations for months. They regard his hold on power, extended after last year's widely disputed elections, as illegitimate, and on Wednesday gave him 3 days to step down. After the deadline came and went, thousands gathered at downtown Bangkok's Ratcha Prasong intersection, surrounded by gleaming shopping malls and watched by traffic police. If Prayut insists on not quitting, we will keep insisting on coming out to oust him, according to organizer Jatupatpai Bunpa Tararaksa, who had called for the protest the night before. Now, he also reaffirmed the movement's 3 core demands: Prayut's resignation, a rewrite of the 2017 military scripted Constitution and for authorities to stop harassing political opponents. Prime Minister Prayut had initially imposed emergency measures, banning gatherings of more than 4, but he lifted them a week later when they failed to stop tens of thousands showing up to guerrilla demonstrations across the capital. Now, the Prime Minister remained resolute on Saturday while attending a prayer ceremony for the country at a historic Bangkok temple, saying all problems can be solved through compromise. He also told reporters he won't quit. Back to the Philippines, Malacanang wished Vice President Leni Robredo good health after she revealed that she was exposed to a person who tested positive for COVID-19. We wish her good health, according to presidential spokesperson Harry Roque in a statement. And during her regular radio program, Vice President Robredo bared that she and some of her staff are undergoing isolation after exposure to a COVID-19 positive patient last week. She also posted the news on her personal Facebook account. According to the Vice President, she has not felt any symptoms of the respiratory disease. She also said her meetings and other activities will be held virtually for the meantime. This is not the first time the Vice President was exposed to the virus. In July, Robredo's office temporarily suspended operations after some staffers contracted COVID-19. All right, we'll be back with more news here on ASEAN in Focus in a short break.
Tol! Balita ko mayroong special episode ang pinikwentuhan.
Oo, meron. Dahil sa Lunes, ipapalabas ng live ang season ender episode ng Pinikwentuhan.
Ha? Ang ganda nun. Kailan nga yun?
Sa Lunes.
Sa Lunes. Di ba, alam ko may premiere.
Oo, kasi mamimigay sila ng Pinikwentuhan na merchandise.
Marami matutuhan doon, ha? Sandali, kailan nga yun? Uli?
Huwag palampasin ang Pelikwentuhan Season Ender episode. Live na mapapanood sa Lunes, October 26, 8 p.m. sa Facebook page ng EBC Films. Kita-kits mga kapelikwentuhan!
It says the best defense is still containment.
We are in uncharted territory.
Thailand volume 450. Nag-5 on to 100%. Namin pa. Pero yung construction eh.
Arnie Aquino here at Hatley Castle, one of the filming locations for the X-Men series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net25.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business every Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. Open for Business, from vision to action.
The Department of Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere announced in the Laging Handa briefing that the three vaccine manufacturers have already applied for the evaluation and regulatory process of their agencies. And these are the Gamaleya vaccine, Janssen, and the Sinovac that are already in the advanced stage of the process. The Undersecretary also mentioned that the DOH is already working with various groups to prepare for the further expansion of cold storage facilities for the vaccines. Let's listen in.
Ang tanong na ating kasama.
So meron ho tayo ngayong tatlo na manufacturers na nakapag-apply na po dito sa ating regulatory process. Yan po yung ating yun pong bakuna na Gamaleya, yun pong Sinovac, at saka po yung sa Janssen. Ito pong tatlong bakuna na ito ay nag-undergo ng mga evaluations at saka mga proseso na ginagawa natin for regulation.
Opo.
Yun pong Sinovac, yan po yung nasa medyo advanced stage na sa ethics review na po siya ngayon. Kailangan natin maintindihan na aside from the vaccines na gusto nating mabili para sa COVID-19, meron po tayong mga existing or current na mga bakuna na kailangan din natin facility. So sa ngayon po nakikita natin na talagang hindi po kulang po. Kaya nakikipag-usap na po tayo sa iba't ibang grupo so that we can expand our storage facilities in preparation for the COVID-19 vaccine.
Out of work and unable to feed his baby son, Kain Fazinian's 23-year-old husband took his own life. He was from a poor family in Myanmar, one of many suffering increased hardship under the coronavirus lockdown. Take a look.
Lorong di samsa ke lau dia, lo tengok lo kan matuaro, lo matuaro benda di ni wili tu matuaro dia kuat ni mawe lo kuat dia, lo dia kuat lorong sampai lo ukate kali kali, ulung ni alo banyak so, mana nungan nungan piat wala lah, lo အခုဒီကလေးလေးမှာအဲ့လိုမျိုးနှုတ်မှုတ်တွေစေးရစားလို့အပ်တဲ့အချိန်မျိုးတွေပါလို့ဖြစ်လာခါကျတော့အဲ့လိုမျိုးအဲ့ဒါကြောင့်တော့ညီမအတိအကျတော့မသိဘူးပေါ့နော်အဲ့လိုမျိုးလုပ်သွားလားညီမတွေ့ရပါတော့လူကြီးနှစ်ယောက်တော့
အဲ့နောင်ရှင်းနေတာအဲ့လိုစုနေတာအဲ့ပါစုနေတာအခုမားလို့ပဲထားတယ်တာပြတာအော်တာခက်ခဲရှိတယ်တွေ့တယ်အရင်ကခက်ခဲနေတယ်ဆိုလို့တက်နိုင်တယ်ဘာတော့တော့တက်နိုင်အခုလိုပြောရတယ်ဘာသာ
All right, we go back to Thailand where the parliament opened for a special session to discuss the growing pro-democracy movement there. We have a report coming in from Cristel Mapa joining us live from Bangkok. Hello, Cristel.
Hi, Alma. Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to all our viewers. Thailand's parliament opened Monday for a special session to discuss the growing youth-led pro-democracy movement, which is demanding Premier Prayut Chan-o-cha's resignation and reforms to the ultra-powerful monarchy. A former military chief who staged the 2014 coup, Prayut has faced increasing pressure in recent weeks by the protesters who regard his premiership as illegitimate. Prayut last week recalled parliament, which was in recess, to discuss how to reduce tensions. And I quote, "It's about how to solve the situation of the protesters," said Tankun Jitisara, one of the secretaries of House Speaker Juan. The protesters want Prayut's resignation, a rewrite of the military scripted constitution, and for the government to stop harassing political opponents. But the two-day session will not address these demands, focusing instead on the illegal protest, according to a parliament statement issued last week. Some protesters have also boldly challenged the monarchy, long a taboo subject in Thailand because of a strict royal defamation laws. Tensions spiked earlier this month when protesters flashed three-finger salutes, a symbol of their movement, at Queen Sutida's motorcade as it passed by. After that incident, the premier responded by imposing emergency measures banning gatherings of more than 4, while authorities arrested scores of activists. Prayut revoked it a week later when it failed to discourage tens of thousands turning up in guerrilla protests across Bangkok. The motorcade incident is also up for discussion in parliament. The protesters say it was not in the plan for the queen to pass that way, but the government says she can go anywhere, Tankun said. No one knows the truth, so we'll talk about that. 3 activists have been charged under a rarely used law banning violence against the Queen, which carries a maximum sentence of life in prison. The demands for royal reform from some protesters include the abolition of the royal defamation law, a clear accounting of the palace's finances, and a call for King Mahavajiralongkorn to stay out of politics. Pro-royalist groups have emerged in response to these unprecedented challenges, gathering in counter rallies to pronounce their love for the king. On Monday, dozens of supporters in yellow shirts, the royal color, gathered outside parliament, telling MPs not to reform the monarchy. They also said that they are ready to defend the monarchy anytime. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Cristel, for your updates there. And looking forward to more updates as we follow this developing story. Thank you, Cristel.
Thank you. I am Cristel Mapa reporting live from Bangkok, Thailand. We live in an interesting time.
Meanwhile, the Health Director General of Malaysia said they've identified more clusters in different states. Joining us from Kuala Lumpur is Gail Aldos. Hello, Gail.
Hello, Alma. Good afternoon, and to all the viewers. Here is the latest COVID-19 updates here in Malaysia. Malaysia's Health Director General Tan Sri Dr. Nur Hisham Abdullah said Sabah has 4 more new clusters among the 9 COVID-19 clusters. There has been a sharp rise in cases following the conclusion of the Sabah state election as a result of an outbreak at the Lahadato lockup. Currently, the states of Selangor and Sabah and the federal territories of Kuala Lumpur, Labuan, and Putrajaya have been placed under the CMCO, or the Conditional Movement Control Order again. The standard operating procedures, or the SOP, for the CMCO this time are: only 2 from a household are allowed to leave home at one time to buy essentials, while high-risk individuals and senior citizens are discouraged from leaving their homes. Crossing of state borders is prohibited except for emergencies, and workers with letters of approval from employers, a valid employee's pass, or letter from employers confirming employment status is required for employees to move between districts for work during this period in Selangor, Kuala Lumpur, and Putrajaya. Pharmacies can operate from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m., whereas clinics can operate for 24 hours. This will apply for both private and public clinics and hospitals. Meanwhile, all public transports are still allowed to operate, and e-hailing and taxis can only carry 2 passengers in each car. Meanwhile, food deliveries are also allowed from 6 a.m. to 12 a.m. All business sectors such as restaurants, food trucks, food courts, hawker stalls, kiosks, and convenience stores are allowed to operate still from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Meanwhile, dine-ins are still allowed, limited per table, but takeaways, drive-thrus, and deliveries are more encouraged. The country has seen an overall 823 new cases and 8 deaths on October 25 yesterday, taking the totals to 26,565 COVID-19 cases and 229 deaths. That's all from me. Back to you, Alma.
Thank you, Gail, for your updates there in Malaysia. You stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Alma. This is Gail Aldos reporting live from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. We live in interesting times.
Malaysia's king Sunday rejected a proposal by the premier to declare a state of emergency and suspend parliament to fight the coronavirus after the plan sparked a massive backlash. Prime Minister Muhyiddin Hassan sought the drastic measures following a recent spike in virus cases, but critics claimed that he was mainly concerned with crushing mountain challenges to his leadership. Muhyiddin seized power without a vote in March after a reformist government collapsed, but his administration is unstable, with only a wafer-thin majority in parliament. His government argued emergency powers would bring stability to fight COVID-19 amid speculation they will lose a looming vote on a budget, but could prompt snap calls some fear could worsen the outbreak. Under the constitution, the king, Sultan Abdullah Sultan Ahmad Shah, has the power to declare a state of emergency if he is persuaded there is a grave threat to Malaysia's security. But following a meeting of Malaysia's Islamic royalty, the palace said the monarch was of the view that there is no need at this moment for the king to declare a state of emergency in the country or any part of Malaysia. Such a declaration, rarely used in Malaysia, would have led to parliament effectively being suspended, and Muhyiddin could have pushed through any law without a vote. Despite rejecting his request, the king praised the government's handling of the outbreak and urged lawmakers to stop politicking that could destabilize the country, according to the palace statement.
Hi everyone! Net25 Kids is inviting you to EBC Webinars 2020, a series of educational and informative webinars for teachers and parents, which will be live streamed via Net25 Kids YouTube page. We will be featuring several guest speakers with years of experience to share information that would be valuable and helpful for teachers and parents as they educate and manage their children in these interesting times. Hope you will join us! For updates, schedules, and more information, please follow the Net25 Kids Facebook page.
Abangan niyo po ako and the rest of the Barkada and your favorite OPM artists on Letters and Music. Primetime na! Mula Monday to Friday, 8 p.m. only on Net25. See you!
Welcome back. Asian markets were mixed Monday, with traders increasingly pessimistic that U.S. lawmakers will pass a new stimulus package before next week's election, while spiking virus cases fanned worries about the economic impact of the new containment measures. Despite months of arduous talks in Washington, there appears to be little chance Republicans and Democrats will hammer out a rescue deal to help hard-strapped Americans, with both sides blaming each other for the impasse. Analysts said investors had essentially given up hope of an agreement being made anytime soon, and they were now setting on Joe Biden and a Democratic sweep of Congress that would open the way for an even bigger spending package in the new year. Tokyo, Sydney, and Singapore were barely moved, while Shanghai, Seoul, and Manila dropped into negative territory. Taipei and Jakarta edged up. Hong Kong was closed for a holiday.
Global financial titan Goldman Sachs agreed to pay $2.9 billion in penalties to settle criminal charges in the 1MDB Malaysian bribery scandal, the largest U.S. fine ever in a corruption case, the Justice Department announced Thursday. Acting U.S. Assistant Attorney General Brian C. Rabbit said Goldman accepted responsibility in the case that involved $1.6 billion in bribes, the largest ever recorded, and massive gains laundered through the U.S. financial system.
I am Brian Rabbit, acting. This morning, the department filed criminal charges in New York against the Goldman Sachs Group and its Malaysian subsidiary, charging each with conspiracy to violate the anti-bribery provisions of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. These charges stem from Goldman Sachs' central role in a massive global scheme to loot billions of dollars from the government-run Malaysian investment fund known as 1MDB, and the subsequent use of those funds by senior Goldman bankers and their co-conspirators to pay billions of dollars in bribes to senior government officials around the world. Goldman Sachs Malaysia pleaded guilty to those charges just a short while ago, and its parent entity, the Goldman Sachs Group, has entered into an agreement with the Department of Justice deferring prosecution on those charges for 3 years, provided certain conditions are met. In a reflection of the seriousness of the bank's conduct, today's resolution includes the largest monetary penalty ever paid to the United States in a corporate criminal foreign bribery resolution and requires the bank to pay a total of over $2.9 billion in criminal fines, penalties, and disgorgement. 1MDB was a multi-billion-dollar investment fund created by the Malaysian government to promote economic development. In 2012 and 2013, Goldman received approximately $600 million in fees, an unusually large amount, for its work helping 1MDB raise $6.5 billion by issuing and selling bonds on the international market. However, billions of dollars were later stolen from 1MDB, some of which was then used to bribe corrupt officials in Malaysia and Abu Dhabi, as well as others. These criminal proceeds were laundered through the United States and other financial institutions and used to make extravagant purchases around the world, including high-end real estate, yachts, art, and other luxury goods. As the bank admitted in court today, senior Goldman bankers played a central role in this scheme, conspiring with others to siphon off approximately $2.7 billion from 1MDB. They then used those funds to line their own pockets and to pay approximately $1.6 billion in bribes. In addition to the involvement of several senior Goldman executives, other personnel at the bank allowed this scheme to proceed by overlooking or ignoring a number of clear red flags. Now, today's resolution is significant. It includes criminal charges against the bank and a guilty plea by its Malaysian subsidiary. It also requires Goldman to disgorge the entirety of its $600 million profit, pay a $2.3 billion penalty, and admit wrongdoing. In short, it imposes serious consequences that reflect the central role that Goldman and its employees played in this serious scheme.
The COVID-19 crisis has hit the garment sector in the Asia-Pacific region hard, with plummeting retail sales in key export markets affecting workers and enterprises throughout supply chains, according to new research from the International Labor Organization, or ILO. Let's listen in.
COVID-19 has had a devastating impact on garment workers and also enterprises in the Asia and the Pacific region. So what we have seen are temporary, in some cases permanent factory closures. So many workers were actually left without work and in many cases without income. And those factories that reopened, they did not reopen at full capacity. So some workers were actually not called back to the factory. We have also seen reductions in wages and delays in wage payments were common as well. When comparing different countries in the region, we know that the economies of some countries rely a lot on the garment sector. And here I'm talking about countries like Cambodia, Myanmar, also Bangladesh, Pakistan or Sri Lanka. And given that the garment sector is one of the sectors that has been hardest hit by this crisis, obviously these countries are suffering a lot. When it comes to different groups of workers, I think it's important to stress that the garment sector is an important employer for female workers. So in some countries, up to 1 in 5 women works in the garment sector. And we see some signs that actually this crisis could contribute to an increase in inequality between men and women.
In terms of what needs to be done to support workers and enterprises during this crisis, the international coordination on stimulus packages and debt relief measures will need to be really central to this in ensuring that the recovery is not only effective but sustainable, especially for lower income countries that have limited fiscal space. Social dialogue needs to be at the center of the recovery and crisis response. And we've seen in this research that in the countries where existing social dialogue structures were present, then the impact on workers and enterprises has been mitigated.
The report, The Supply Chain Ripple Effect, How COVID-19 is Affecting Garment Workers and Factories in Asia and the Pacific, assess the pandemic's impact on supply chains, factories, and workers in Bangladesh, Cambodia, China, India, Indonesia, Myanmar, Pakistan, Philippines, Sri Lanka, and Vietnam.
The United States said Friday it will deploy Coast Guard patrol ships in the Western Pacific to counter the destabilizing and malign activities by China in disputed fishing grounds of the South China Sea, accusing China of illegal and unregulated fishing, as well as harassment of fishing boats from the regional countries. White House National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien said in a statement that the U.S. Coast Guard is strategically homeporting significantly enhanced fast response cutters in the Western Pacific. He said these Sentinel-class vessels will carry out maritime security operations, including helping fishing boats in collaboration with regional partners who have limited offshore surveillance and enforcement capacity, and ensure freedom of navigation. O'Brien added that the Coast Guard, which is under the Department of Homeland Security or DHS, was also studying whether to permanently station several of its patrol ships in the area of American Samoa in the South Pacific. Washington regularly accuses China of breaking international law by sending its warships as escorts for fishing vessels into fishing grounds of other countries. Last month, Indonesia protested about an incursion by Chinese Coast Guard ships in its exclusive economic zone, which is situated between its own territorial waters and international waters, and where the state claims exclusive rights to exploit national resources. China claims almost the whole of the South China Sea as its own, a claim contested by several countries including Malaysia, Taiwan, the Philippines, and Indonesia.
In other news, a Rohingya boy from a refugee camp in Bangladesh has been killed by a landmine inside Myanmar, according to camp leaders, in a case that highlighted the country's refusal to implement an international ban. More than 160 countries have signed up to a treaty banning landmines, and a monitor group has said Myanmar forces are the only ones known to have deployed mines in 2019. Mohammed Zaber, 13, who lived in the Kutupalong refugee camp in Cox's Bazar, died Friday in an explosion after going fishing with friends on the border, according to community leader Dil Mohammed. A border guard Bangladesh official confirmed the incident took place inside Myanmar. The international campaign to ban landmines has said Myanmar, which has refused to sign the 1997 ban treaty, was the only country where the use of new anti-personnel mines had been documented in recent years. Many Rohingya were killed or wounded by mines in 2017 when a military crackdown on the persecuted Muslim group led to an exodus of more than 740,000 people from Myanmar's Rakhine state into Bangladesh.
Tol, balita ko mayroong special episode ang Pinikwentuhan.
Oo, meron. Dahil sa Lunes, ipapalabas ng live ang season ender episode ng Pinikwentuhan.
Ang ganda nun. Kailan nga yun?
Sa Lunes.
Sa Lunes, di ba? Alam ko ito niyo.
Oo, kasi mamimigay sila ng Pinikwentuhan merchandise.
Marami matutuhan doon, ha? Saka Sandali, kailan nga yun? Uli?
Huwag palampasin ang Pelikwentuhan Season Ender episode. Live na mapapanood sa Lunes, October 26, 8 p.m. sa Facebook page ng EBC Films. Kita-kits mga kapelikwentuhan!
The San Juan City government is set to install the country's first solar-powered bike pit stop and repair station in the open parking area within the City Hall. In a social media post on Sunday, Mayor Francis Zamora shared a glimpse of the Viking facility project design, which will be reconstructed within the city's open space along with Pinaglabanan Street. The city government inked a sponsorship agreement with its private partner, Allianz PNB Life Insurance Inc., in a bid to launch various biking initiatives. Zamora said the agreement involves the installation of hundreds of safety bollards in major biking areas within the city to ensure safe lanes for bikers. The city government targets to launch the pit stop on the third week of November.
Tarmac meals have become an unlikely hit for coronavirus-battered Singapore Airlines, with hundreds of passengers paying the equivalent of a budget ticket just to dine inside grounded A380 jumbos. For a hefty sum of 642 Singaporean dollars, people with a hankering for airline food can have a meal on an A380, the world's biggest passenger jet. Take a look.
The food is pretty amazing. It's better than the one they served during the flight.
In smooth sailing, it's a good experience touring the cabins. Just started the meal, the satay was just served to us. It was delicious and it really feels to be like on a long haul flight, having the first meal service. Of course, the feeling of actually flying will be better because there's the excitement of going to a new destination, to explore new destination. And even though we can't do it now due to COVID, this is a good substitute for now to recreate the feels of being a long haul flight.
And this is the first time bringing the kid out, especially with an infant. So I guess it's the best, I'll say, a training ground for future travel. Because it's like flying, in the air with two kids. When they're going to be cranky, it's going to be hard to manage. So at least right now it's still manageable. It's not in the air, it's just within the plane, and it's should be a lot better.
With the aviation industry in deep crisis due to the pandemic, airlines have turned to alternative ways to raise cash, from offering flights to nowhere to tours of aircraft. Singapore Airlines, which has cut thousands of jobs and grounded nearly all its planes this year, decided to try another route. And this is to offer travel-starved customers the opportunity to dine on one of two A380s turned into pop-up restaurants. Now, the chance to eat plain food proved surprisingly popular. All 900 seats for lunch on October 24 and 25 sold out within half an hour of bookings. Now, citing overwhelming demand, the carrier announced the restaurants would be open for an additional 2 days. Lunch and dinner are now being offered on all 4 dates. The most expensive option is a 4-course meal in a first-class suite, while the cheapest costs 53 Singapore dollars and consists of a 3-course meal in economy class. About half the seats will be left empty on the double-decker jets parked at Changi Airport, and this is to keep with social distancing guidelines. And for those seeking to bring the in-flight experience into their living rooms, Singapore Airlines is also offering home deliveries of plain meals. But the airline has ditched plans for flights to nowhere, short journeys starting and ending at the same airport, following an outcry over the potential environmental impact. Thank you, Chriselle, for helping me out today.
Thank you, Alma, for having me today. You're welcome. Once again, I am Chriselle Yacuna. We live in interesting times.
And I'm Alma Angeles. Thank you for joining us today here in ASEAN in Focus. We'll see you back tomorrow. We live in interesting times.
Excuse me.
Yes po.
What do you call